Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're jumping straight into the deep end by unpacking Psalm 74. We are looking at a profoundly striking piece of ancient literature that explores exactly how humans historically processed intense communal trauma and, quite literally, demanded justice from the divine. It's an incredible text that gives us a raw, unfiltered window into ancient grief, anger, and resilience. We're going to break down the anatomy of this lament, looking at how it's structured, the vivid imagery it employs, and the intense emotional journey it takes us on. Right off the bat, rather than a gentle introduction or some polite preamble, the text drops us immediately into raw agony. "Oh God, why do you cast us off forever?" It presents this desperate, unfiltered cry from a people who are feeling entirely abandoned by the divine in their absolute darkest hour. There's no sugarcoating here, guys. The author actually describes God's anger smoking against the sheep of his own pasture. It's an incredibly bold way to open a text, demanding an answer for what feels like a permanent and devastating rejection. And that brings us to the core thesis of this entire document. This opening forces us to confront a universal human tension. I mean, how do you reconcile the belief in a loving, protective higher power with the visceral reality of seemingly unstoppable destruction? When everything around you is literally burning to the ground, where is the protector? It's a question that is echoed through history, and this text doesn't shy away from the horrific reality of their situation. They are demanding that the divine direct your steps to the perpetual ruins. Before the poetry even begins, we get a vital piece of context. The text is labeled as a Maskil of Asaph. Now, it's super easy to skip over these little introductory notes, but they actually provide a massive amount of context for how this text was meant to be used and understood by its original audience. So, what is a Maskil? Well, it indicates that this wasn't just some dry historical record or a private diary entry. It is a musical or liturgical term. This means it was meant to be heard, it was meant to be sung, and it was meant to be processed communally. Just imagine an entire community, having just lost absolutely everything, gathering together to sing this song of profound grief and accusation. It's a structured, shared vehicle for their collective trauma. Moving into the body of the text, the author forces our attention onto the physical devastation. They plead with the divine to look at the perpetual ruins. The enemy hasn't just attacked, they have destroyed everything in the sanctuary. The very place where the divine was supposed to dwell, Mount Zion, has been utterly decimated. The text forces the reader and the divine audience to stare directly at the rubble. The text uses incredibly sensory, violent language to really drive this point home. The foes aren't just conquering, they are roaring in the meeting place. The author compares them to men swinging axes in a forest of trees. Just think of the beautiful, intricately carved wood of a sacred space being hacked apart with hatchets and hammers. And then comes the ultimate desecration. They set the sanctuary on fire, burning all the meeting places to the ground. It vividly paints a terrifying, chaotic picture of the invasion. But the destruction isn't just physical. Adding to the trauma is a profound psychological and spiritual blow. The text says, "We do not see our signs. There is no longer any prophet." They're entirely cut off from divine communication. They don't have their own signs anymore. Instead, the enemy has set up their own foreign signs right there in the ruins. Imagine the agonizing uncertainty of that. They're left in the dark, with absolutely no one who can tell them how long this nightmare will last. Okay, let's move to verse 12 and see how this builds, because the narrative arc takes a massive, dramatic pivot here. Right when the despair reaches its absolute peak, the author sharply turns away from the burning, chaotic present. Verse 12 starts with, "Yet God my King is from of old," and suddenly, boom, we are thrust into the majestic, ancient past. This is a deliberate structural shift to keep the community from completely drowning in their current sorrow. And this brilliantly illustrates the power of contrast within the text. On one side, we have the chaos of the human enemy, burning meeting places, profaning the dwelling place, and seeking to utterly subdue the people. But on the other side, the author juxtaposes this against the vast, ordered, cosmic power of God, dividing the sea, establishing the heavenly lights, and fixing the boundaries of the earth. It's a direct comparison. The logic is simple. If God can order the entire cosmos, surely God can handle these human enemies swinging hatchets. To truly emphasize this absolute, ancient power, the text invokes some intense mythic imagery. "You crushed the heads of Leviathan. You gave him as food for the creatures of the wilderness." Leviathan represents the ultimate ancient sea monster of chaos.
By recalling the divine defeat of this terrifying, multi-headed beast, the author is reminding the community, and God, of a track record of conquering insurmountable chaotic forces. The enemies of the present are implicitly compared to the conquered monsters of the past.
Then, the text just lists these awe-inspiring steps of cosmic creation: splitting open springs, establishing the sun, fixing the boundaries of the earth, and creating the rhythm of summer and winter. By sequentially recalling these acts, the author uses memory as a psychological anchor. In a moment of total despair, when the physical sanctuary is literally a smoldering ruin, remembering the divine architecture of the universe itself provides a crucial, desperate foothold of hope.
Now, here's the crucial point. This memory of cosmic order isn't just nostalgia or daydreaming. It serves a highly specific function. It empowers the author to make a final, demanding pivot. If God is the creator of the sun and the conqueror of sea monsters, then God absolutely has the power to fix the current situation. The remembrance of the past is practically weaponized into a demand for immediate action and justice in the present.
As we reach the final verses, we can see the tone shift one last time. It moves away from that sweeping cosmic poetry into an incredibly resolute, demanding plea for the protection of those who cannot protect themselves. The author leverages the relationship, the ancient agreements, and says, in essence, you must act now.
The specific pleas for action here are fascinating. The author asks God to remember how the enemy scoffs, essentially appealing to divine honor. But then it gets deeply tender and desperate. Do not deliver the soul of your dove to the wild beasts. The text contrasts the dark places of the land that are full of violence with the delicate vulnerability of the dove and the poor. They are demanding that the ancient covenant be honored to save the downtrodden from complete annihilation.
This brings us to the climax of the text and the core imperative of this entire lament. Arise, O God, defend your cause. It's an incredibly bold command. They are literally telling the divine to wake up, to remember the clamor of the foes, and to act. They are flat out refusing to let the roaring and the uproar of those who destroy sanctuaries be the final word in this historical tragedy. Yet, as we wrap up this explainer, it's vital to note that this text doesn't end with a neat, tidy resolution. It concludes on the exact same unresolved, agonizing tension we saw at the very beginning. How long, O God, is the foe to scoff? The enemies are still roaring. The ruins are still smoking. The text leaves us to ponder the enduring nature of this ancient cry for justice. It's a profound reminder of how humans have always grappled with communal trauma, searching the cosmic past for a reason to demand a better, more just future today. So looking at our world now, how often do we still find ourselves asking the exact same question? Thanks for joining me on this one.